What do you make of these people, me being one of them, that watch, serial killer movies when we fall asleep?
Well, I think that that's only an issue if it's stopping you from falling asleep.
Do you see, because I have this argument a lot with my partner, she can't understand why I need to watch this like really stimulating stuff when I fall asleep. She likes quiet, and I tell myself I need to like listen to something. Do you see like variance in this kind of thing, and is there a better approach? Or
this comes down to an individualized approach to sleep, and that's why I'm always very reluctant to say this is the perfect night's sleep, these are the rules for sleep. For example, there are some people who for whom caffeine doesn't really influence their sleep and can have a double espresso an hour before bed and still have no problems getting off to sleep. For most of us, that's not the case. If you are somebody who can watch something very stimulating, very scary, and then switch it off and roll over and go off to sleep, then I guess that's not a problem for you. For most people, that's probably not the best thing to be doing at night. I think that long term, one of the issues is with all of these kinds of activities in bed at night before you go off to sleep is that they weaken the psychological associations between bed and sleep. And so if you start associating bed being a place where you're mentally active, where you're engaged, then if you have an underlying predisposition to insomnia, for example, then that can sometimes set the stage for developing insomnia later on.
The average person that you've worked with in your clinical practice that's struggling with sleep is at the heart of the issue just poor sort of sleep hygiene, like you've said there.
Yeah.
Because I've got so many friends that say to me that they struggle with their sleep. Many of them have struggled with it for years. And I doubt there's some sort of genetic reason why this many people are struggling with sleep. So I imagine it's just some kind of behavioral reason.
So I think that the genes that predispose to insomnia are pretty widespread. But obviously, in pretty much all areas of medicine, there is an interaction between genetics and environment. And certainly poor sleep hygiene, and it's a horrible term, I hate that term, but it's the term that is most widely used and understood, can certainly put in place certain aspects of behaviour that then can give rise to chronic insomnia in the long term. So if you've got very bad chronic insomnia, then suddenly putting good sleep hygiene in place, it's unlikely to fix it. But it may be that poor sleep hygiene in the first instance gave rise or at least predisposed you to developing insomnia.
And what is poor sleep hygiene? If I wanted to be the worst possible sleeper in the world, what would I have to do?
So I think you would probably have to set up your home office in your bedroom.
Okay.
You'd have to have, your TV on in your bedroom all the time.
Okay.
Be surrounded by electronic devices. Drink a lot of coffee late in the evening.
Alcohol?
Drinks a little bit of alcohol. So alcohol in the short term, of course, is quite sedating. It's a central nervous system depressant. But it does dramatically worsen the quality of your sleep, and for various reasons, the direct chemical effect, the fact that you've got a full bladder, the fact that you're probably snoring a little bit more, so alcohol's not a good thing. Not having a wind down period, so, gambling on the stock market until 1 a.m, switching your laptop and then trying to go to bed, those kinds of things. So that's, the quintessential very, very bad sleep hygiene.
What about when I eat?
So, eating is perhaps less important, but avoiding a very large carbohydrate-rich meal before you go to bed for two reasons. One is that we know that it can cause some fluctuations in terms of your blood sugar, and also if you've got a bit of reflux, it can make that much worse.
Okay. What about sleeping in bed with somebody else?
Well, I think that for some people, and again, this goes back to no one rule for everybody. If you've got a sleep trait termed sleep reactivity, which is where your sleep is very liable to your environment, then obviously sleeping next to somebody who's snoring loudly or who gets up in the middle of the night 2 or 3 times to urinate can be very disruptive to your sleep. If you've got very little sleep reactivity, you may actually find it more comfortable to sleep with somebody in the same bed as you.
I was thinking the other day, because where I've currently moved into, there's no blinds or curtains in my bedroom. And I was wondering if that might be a good thing. because it at least means that in terms of my circadian rhythm, I'm waking up at the same time every day because I'm waking up when the sun comes up.
Yeah, but the sun comes up at different times on different days, firstly. So if you were doing that routinely, you might find yourself really rather sleep deprived in the summer months. And also there is some emerging evidence that exposure to light at night in your sleep is not very good for you. So there was a very recent study that implied that light exposure at night increases your risk of diabetes. So it certainly is not good for the quality of your sleep. And the likelihood is that you won't wake up as soon as it's light. You'll wake up an hour or so after it's got light. But during that hour or so, it may have had a negative impact on the quality of your sleep. So having a dark bedroom is really part of good sleep hygiene, as is having a quiet bedroom that is not too hot or too cold.
What if you wear a sleep mask? Does that solve it?
Yes, it does. I mean, I wear a sleep mask. I think it's, particularly if you don't have good blackout curtains or blinds in your bedroom, using a sleep mask, particularly in the summer months, is probably very helpful indeed.
Does that mean that the only light receptors we have are behind our eyes?
Well, I think that there were some rumours on the internet that there were light receptors elsewhere, but certainly the only ones that we know to be of significance in terms of defining our circadian rhythm are the ones in our retinas.
Because I did psychology when I was in secondary school, and I remember reading one of the psychology books, or maybe my psychology teacher told me this, I think it was Mrs. Lowney, that there was some studies where they shined a light like underneath someone's knees.
Yes.
And people would like wake up when they shine the lights there.
Yeah, I think that's been very much discounted now.
It is a bit strange though that the only light receptor would be behind the eyes. It just feels like, I don't know, feels like poor design. That there's only one place where we figure out if it's night or day.
So you see that, for example, in people who've lost their sight.
Right.
So in some individuals who have lost their sight completely, then they lose the regulation of their circadian rhythm and they develop circadian rhythm disorders, something called a non-24-hour rhythm disorder, whereby their circadian rhythm is on for example, a 25-hour cycle. And so every night they will go to bed 1 hour later than they did the previous night, and will go right the way around the clock, every month or so. So that's a very good piece of evidence that actually it's those cells in the retina that are of crucial importance for maintaining the stability of our circadian rhythm.
I wrote that down. I wrote down in one recent study, 40% of totally blind individuals had a non-24-hour circadian rhythm, which really kind of for me also highlights just how important it is to think about my circadian rhythm and how much impact it's having on my whole body. The other part you mentioned was the biological element to our circadian rhythms, which people refer to as chronotypes.
Yes.
And this idea of chronotypes, which is essentially, from my understanding, that genetically we all have a slight sort of disposition to sleep in at certain times,
yes,
and to wake up at certain times.
Yeah.
So there's these names, right? There's like the owl, the lark, or whatever else. I think I'm an owl, but that also could just be bad habits.
Yeah. So certainly there's that sort of genetic predisposition. There's also these environmental factors, but there's also age, in that our circadian rhythm changes a little bit as we go through different stages of life. So, it's not at all uncommon for teenagers to become more evening chronotypes. And then as we get older, we tend to shift back to the morning. So that's part and parcel of our aging biology as well. So I think that genetics is really important, but so are other factors as well.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.